Evan Lazar, welcome in from Foxboro, scene of shocking breaking news for some.
Doing your victory lap already?
It's not a victory lap, but again, this is what happened. It happened, and Cam Newton is released. Everybody here knows what the story is, so we don't need to break it down again. Mac Jones will be the starter. A surprise, and again, to many, simply because what we saw during the preseason, Cam Newton taking his starter reps and obviously starting with the the starters in the preseason games, and it appeared all signs were pointing towards him being the week 1 starter. Cut down day today, 4 p.m., and then bang. Very true to how Bill operates. He speaks, doesn't say a thing. Soon after that, the news kind of starts to leak. Cam Newton has been cut. Your initial reaction when you first heard this, Evan?
My initial reaction is this. For 20 years with Patriots head coach Bill Belichick at the helm here, we have heard that the best player is going to play, right? The guy that makes himself available to the team, the guy that goes out there and does all the right things and is the best player on the field at practice during the preseason, and resume and experience and all these other factors that Cam Newton has at his side that Mac Jones doesn't necessarily have wouldn't matter when push came to shove. And it felt like for the last year or so that Bill has gotten away from that a little bit with Cam, right? Cam has felt like an exception at times to that rule where they've played him and they brought him back despite all the struggles that he's had. Now we're seeing Mac Jones take over for Cam and Cam getting cut. And it's a harken back to that core principle with the Patriots that the guy that is the best player on the field is going to play. And Mac Jones this summer in the preseason games, in training camp practices, in Josh McDaniels' offense was the best player at that position this summer. And now he's going to be the one that's going to take the field in week 1 against Miami. And you also add that layer into it as well with the COVID situation and with the vaccine and just doing what was best for the team in that regard as well. That's what we always hear. Do what's best for the football team. Ultimately, Mac Jones did all of the right things, and he earned the starting job for the Patriots. And if they had given it to Cam Newton, I would have totally understood that maybe they felt like Mac wasn't ready, but it would have felt a little bit of a departure from what we've heard so often with the Patriots.
Yeah. And so, and again, just going, and by no means is a victory lap, but I think the signs were there. It just, nobody knew if Bill was going to pull the trigger. And my belief from the get-go was always that, from the point that they drafted Mac, and I thought the tip off here was signing Hoyer, which was, why would they bring in Hoyer? And people were guessing, practice for extra QB in camp. Then Stidham was hurt. That happened after the fact. There to mentor Mac, and that seemed to be the case. And that didn't. I didn't think that was the case. I thought that this was a possible scenario where, and we talked about this a lot, and you've talked about it. I don't believe it was a competition so much as it was seeing if Mac was ready. Cam was clearly the break glass in case of emergency quarterback. And again, it makes sense why you would bring Cam in for this situation as opposed to go sign a veteran and say, here, Ryan Fitzpatrick, or you're the starter, and then bench him and be like, why did I sign here? I signed to be a starter. With Cam was a chance to compete or, to return. He knew the system, but also someone they could easily move on from and not feel that they had done anything. And that was it. I think that was kind of the thing is Mac just had to show he was ready, by whatever metrics they needed, to feel good about it. And they clearly did. But this is what many people, yourself included, were seeing the whole time. You're like, wow. He looks ready. That was the thing. It wasn't I want the rookie to start. This car in the garage. I want to take it out for a spin, even though you don't know how to drive stick yet. It was clearly he looks like he's absolutely 100% ready by the eye test at camp, the metrics, the throws he makes, the expected plays that he could have made on every given snap. He just looks. We haven't seen that really from a rookie in a while to be able to look as far along as Mac has looked.
Right. And this isn't a victory lap for me either, because I was dead wrong. I thought that they were going to roll with Cam Newton to start the season and then hand the keys over to Mac, let's say week 5, week 6, something like that. Instead, they go right to Mac. And I've been saying going all the way back to minicamp, that the ultimate thing with this competition was when you look at Mac Jones and you look at Cam Newton and you look at their body of work in practice and in the preseason games, one QB fits Josh McDaniels to a T, and the other QB is an odd fit in the system. And Mac was the one that had fit the system the best. He's the one that gets through the progressions the fastest, gets the ball out the quickest, has the best accuracy to all three levels, is the most consistent mechanically down in and down out. Mac, when he throws the football, the mechanics are the same every single throw. Right, there's no hitches, there's no weird footwork, there's nothing to broken there with his entire mechanical process. With Cam, you see some inaccuracies, you see some inconsistencies. They want somebody that is going to be efficient, right? That's going to be mechanically sound, that's going to get through the reads, make the right play based off the coverage, all these types of things. And Mac Jones did that consistently all summer long. And we have, not just myself, but everybody down here that's been down here at training camp practices has said all summer long that Mac Jones has looked like the best quarterback at Patriots practice. The question was going to ultimately be, was Bill Belichick prepared to start a rookie week one? Right. That was all that was really in question here. It was never which quarterback was going to be the QB for the next 5 to 10 years, which quarterback was going to even be the quarterback to end the season in 2021. It was always going to be Mac Jones. But at some point in time, it felt like it was a little bit too soon for Mac and Bill's eyes, but ultimately it was enough. And like I said at the beginning, the best quarterback on the field. They stripped away resumes, former MVPs, Super Bowl appearances, all this kind of stuff. None of that mattered to Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. Ultimately, it was who was the quarterback that executed our offense the best this summer, and it was clearly Mac Jones.
And so, and that's what I guess the narrative that I never fully understood was that Belichick's going to play it safe. I do know. I mean, we have seen in the past for sure an over-reliance on veterans at some positions, and that's definitely reared its head in the last couple of years where, you know, he played guys, you know, there was a Jason McCourty, you know, over JC Jackson, or he's playing Simon, you know, out of position because so you'd seen a little bit of over-reliance on veterans, certainly in the last couple of years. And you know, last year you'd said it wasn't just let's maybe give Cam a rest. It was play the kids, you know, when it was clear that the season was lost. And he wasn't doing that. And that was the first bit of stubbornness in that area we'd seen from Belichick in that regards, because he's usually a play the best player sort of guy. However, when it comes to the quarterback, and I'll date myself a little bit here, if you go back to the year Tom Brady took over for Drew Bledsoe, just look at that situation. Brady was third on the depth chart entering camp that year and passed Damon Heward for second, just to be able to take some second team reps playing behind a then Pro Bowl caliber quarterback who made the Pro Bowl the year after the Patriots let him go for Buffalo. Granted, he was limited in some of the things that he could do, but Brady, you could argue, was less ready to take over that job, even though they'd seen him in the regular season. They had the benefit of that, but less ready to take over that job than Mac Jones, who looks far more evolved in year one than Brady did in year two, even in terms of what the Patriots were seeing behind the scenes. So again, we're not saying he's going to be better than, but it was a much lower hurdle for Mac to get over than Brady when he was named the starter. He was supplanting someone who at that point was still a top 12 NFL quarterback.
Right. And at the time, Drew Bledsoe was the week one starter, and it felt like that. If the injury to Drew Bledsoe never happens, then Tom
Brady
Brady's
might never have started there.
Right. Yeah. He might have started eventually. The stories, the tales that they've told since then, or that Bill Belichick saw this behind the scenes coming, right? Yeah. That Brady was eventually going to be his guy.
Loved him, was almost looking for the opportunity and took it. So yes, they liked a lot that they saw there, but it was a bit of an unknown.
So despite the fact that Cam was the first one up in all the drills, and Cam was the starting quarterback in the preseason games, and all these types of things, we probably should have looked more into the details of what was actually going on when it came to this competition, because for starters, Mac out-repped Cam Newton by a landslide. in both training camp practices and in the games themselves. The games themselves, I think it was 101 dropbacks for Mac Jones to 38 dropbacks for Cam Newton in the 3 preseason games, right? Just a heavily favored Mac. And everybody said, oh, well, Cam's the starter, so they're giving the reps to the rookie because Cam's going to get all the reps during the regular season, so this makes sense to give it to him now. We should have looked a little bit more into that. The other thing that we should have looked into was the types of plays that were being called by Josh McDaniels when the respective quarterbacks were out there. And at some right away, right, when against Washington, the second half starts and the Patriots go tempo, no huddle out of a spread with Mac Jones. And they put that all on him already to run the show at the line of scrimmage. And that probably should have been a tip of the hand as well, that they felt really good about where Mac Jones was at mentally. And you also throw into there last week against the Giants, or a couple days ago against the Giants in the preseason finale, they run Haas juke from empty. Right. And we joked about it that I had to get my question in there about Haas and all that stuff after the game to Mac Jones. But that is a Patriot staple, right? That's they call it Michael Jordan as the one word association when they go no huddle, because it's the GOAT. It's the best play they have in the playbook. It can beat any type of coverage and adjust to every type of coverage. And Mac Jones ran it 3 times in a row against the Giants flawlessly. And he threw He threw the seam to Isaiah Zuber, then he threw the hitch route to Ramondre Stevenson, and he hit Isaiah Zuber next drive in the hands on the seam again, and Zuber just dropped it. So 3 times in a row, he's running the Patriots plays, their core concepts. The throw to Gunnar Olszewski that Gunnar dropped against the Giants is under center play action. You pull the guard, you simulate the power scheme, you pull the receiver over the middle of the field, and Mac Jones puts it in stride on the money for Gunnar, and it should have been a 20, 25-yard game, but Gunnar dropped the football, right? So these are all Patriot-style concepts that Mac Jones is running under center, spread stuff, tempo, quick game, all these types of things that they're doing. And ultimately, we should have looked more into the minutia or the details of what they were actually running with Mac Jones versus, oh, well, Cam's getting the first reps and Cam's going against the starters in the preseason games, and Cam is the one that is breaking the huddle first in training camp practices. They were doing a lot more with Mac Jones from the jump in the passing game than they ever did with Cam Newton.
Well, and that's the thing. It's not only what they were doing, but it's twofold in that regard. Yes, those are the types of plays they were running, but part of it was a test. They were taking, they were given different tests. What they were testing to see whether Mac could handle the advanced concepts that they're actually going to run during the season. And he was being tested the whole time to see, as I said, whatever bar he could clear to see if he could do it. And you're 100% right. It makes sense that most of these snaps with Cam was, one, it wasn't a fait accompli that it was going to be Mac. But the other was in deference to him. You've brought him in here. He is the starter. It's a respect thing as well. Also, you cause a massive stir if all of a sudden you either start alternating or Mac just comes out and takes first team reps one week. That changes the narrative around there. It possibly loses Cam. There's a lot of different reasons why the Patriots would show what they showed in regards to Cam Newton all season long. But clearly you can see in the conversations on the sideline, in training camp and practice that he's having with Josh McDaniels, this is the guy they were hoping could get there. But you're right. It was a matter of, could he get there quickly enough? And obviously he did. And what's interesting here is Cam did not have a bad preseason. Cam, in fact, had a pretty good preseason. All things considered, he looked considerably better than he did at a lot of points last year, certainly that he did in camp leading up. And you would notice some improvements here. I guess 2 questions. Does Cam have any chance of signing anywhere else here? Obviously, you cut him instead of keep him as backup. 1, Cam might not have wanted to be backup, but 2, it's a respect thing as well. Go out there and get yourself a job if you can. You're a veteran. We want you to be able to succeed. I don't know that he does, but I don't know if you see it.
So there was an argument there to be made about the Patriots keeping both quarterbacks and running a Drew Brees, Taysom Hill type of situation, right? Where Cam comes in on the goal line. He's the short down yardage running back / quarterback, right? Exactly what the Saints did with Taysom Hill. When Drew Brees was healthy, Taysom Hill was playing 4 or 5 snaps a game at quarterback. They bring him in to run the Wildcat, and they bring Drew Brees back out to run their offense. But I think ultimately what won out in that situation was the discourse on the outside, back and forth. Should Mac be the starter? Should Cam be the starter? Keeping both of those guys on the roster, one person was going to be looking over their shoulder constantly, right? Whether it was Cam as the starting quarterback looking over his shoulder at Mac, or Mac looking over his shoulder at Cam, and all these types of things. You have to pick a path and you have to go down that road, right? You have to pick a path.
And no one is, so that's the problem too, is no one is going to be sitting if Mac Jones has some hiccups and struggles saying, we got to get Hoyer in.
Right.
It would have to be disastrously bad where he gets overwhelmed or dinged up. And if that happens, that's the NFL, like if he gets hurt for sure, but he'd have to be so bad for there to be calls for, you got to get him out of there. And again, the same would not have been true for Cam. Cam could have thrown an incomplete, bounced a pass short of somebody at 3rd and 7 in the second series of the year, and immediately that noise starts. So again, Belichick is a drown out the noise thing. That's something you guys deal with. We don't deal with it, but it would have been real. You also have quite a few Cam people in there too, and you wonder whether. There's a lot of people who love Cam, what he did, his personality, bringing guys together, knowing everybody, the nicknames, all of that stuff. That stuff's real. Like, people really dug Cam in that building. And if you've got people who are loyal to him and seeing the kid struggle, being like, what did we hand it to this guy for? Like, Cam's a pro. Let's get this guy in there. And that could create some factions in there as well. Because Cam is a very well liked.
I guarantee you, week 1 against Miami, if they came out in the first quarter and the offense looked like crap, the stadium, the Mac chants would have started across the entire stadium. Instantly. First third down where Cam Newton, first interception by Cam Newton, first big mistake by Cam against Miami week 1, you would hear the Mac, all around the stadium, right? And that, again, you have to pick a path, right? You can't just kind of play it. You can't have a foot in both doors, and with the quarterback especially. You can do that at other positions, but at the quarterback position, the best thing is to pick a path and go down it. Now, the other question that you asked about Cam potentially signing on elsewhere. So I do think that that's a possibility. There are some teams that I think would make a lot of sense. Houston's obviously the one that comes to mind, because with Deshaun Watson's situation, you just don't know if he's going to play this year at all. Cam plays, he's not Deshaun Watson, obviously, but he plays a similar style in a way to Deshaun Watson as a mobile quarterback. So at least if they think that maybe Deshaun Watson could play at some point this year, you don't have to completely change the offense, right? You're going to be able to kind of keep it the same and then ultimately change the offense to Deshaun when he's able to play, if he is able to play. The other team that I would really look at, and this is, to me, the most fascinating one, is the Chicago Bears, because Justin Fields is there now, and Fields is one of Cam's. He looks up to Cam. Cam's a mentor of his. He really, really loves Cam Newton. They go back a long, long ways to 7-on-7 camps and things like that. And Justin Fields has talked a lot about how he emulates his game after prime Cam Newton. Right. Yeah. So Andy Dalton in Chicago makes zero sense. Right. You have this young mobile quarterback in Justin Fields, who is everything that you want in a mobile QB. Right. Cannon arm, great legs, speed, all those types of things. Everything.
And then you have a straight up stand up in the pocket passing type guy. It is strange to have two quarterbacks who play totally different styles as your 1 and your 2. So it does make sense to mirror one. And yes, cutting Dalton, giving Fields the job, and bringing Cam in behind him would make infinitely more sense than starting Dalton and having Fields as a backup.
Right. So Matt Nagy, the coach with the Chicago Bears, has really stood by Andy Dalton as his bridge quarterback, right? Saying we're going to start Andy Dalton and then we're going to eventually go to Justin Fields when the time is right. But Cam and Justin Fields makes a whole lot more sense in that equation than certainly what we see right now with Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. So,
and you could have made that argument too here. Keeping Cam might have been more of a possibility had the Patriots moved up and drafted Justin Fields, which a lot of people, both of us included, wanted to see them do, as well, because that fit might have made sense too.
Right. So I think Houston and Chicago are two teams that could potentially be interested. Yep. Outside of that, I think it's really maybe Washington. Ron Rivera is there now. He obviously coached Cam in Carolina for years. So maybe if they like Fitzpatrick, but if they feel like maybe they can get more out of Cam than Fitzpatrick, they could see. I could see that one. But ultimately Cam is going to now have to decide through and through, is he willing to be a bridge quarterback, right? Is he willing to be the guy in
I don't think
Chicago
so.
for 5 or 6 weeks? Is it worth it to him?
I don't think so.
Or is he just going to hang it up at that point?
I don't think he hangs it up either. I think he waits. Rather than go somewhere and be the backup, you wait for the injury or you wait for something to happen and then be there waiting in the wings. That makes most sense to me. I would imagine Cam Newton, rather than run right out and sign here, could do that. But you're right. There could be more surprise cuts. You never know what could happen in San Fran with Jimmy Garoppolo. And the assumption is they're starting both, but that wouldn't be shocking. Garoppolo is going to be guaranteed $28 million if he makes the opening roster versus zero if he doesn't. So I'm still curious there, though it seems that they're going to pick him up. But it does make sense to sit and to wait. Maybe a situation where a presumptive starter or a rookie starter struggles, or there's an injury, and Cam Newton would be waiting there in the wings versus just go somewhere and be someone else's backup. I do wonder whether he had the option here or he was straight cut. I believe he was probably just straight cut because of all the reasons of keeping him around would have been difficult here. There's some people in the chat asking about Stephon Gilmore. We will get to that in a little bit. We wanted to focus on the top story of the day, which of course was Patriots releasing Cam Newton and Mac Jones will be named the starter. The question now is, he looked ready, but what do you think the Patriots are going to do, with Mac? Are they just going to roll him out there and say, here's our playbook, go do the stuff that we do? Are they going to be careful with him? How do you see this playing out, in the first few weeks here? And again, you've got Flores, you've got a couple of tricky defensive challenges in those first weeks. How do you see it playing out with Mac as the guy?
So the biggest concern that I had was starting Mac right away, especially against Brian Flores, was how he was handling in the preseason and in training camp exotic coverage rotations in the back end from the safeties. And there's a play on third down against the Giants in this preseason finale where the Giants show him too high structure pre-snap, right? And he's got a backside slant, or actually a strong side slant to J.J. Taylor. J.J. Taylor is isolated against the linebacker flexed out wide, right? We see the Patriots run this play with James White all the time. They have the two inside verticals. They're going to run the slant to J.J. Taylor. Middle of the field looks wide open, right? The two safeties are deep. There's nobody in the middle of the field. Ball snapped, and they rotated in, right? And they take the deep safety, they rotate him into a robber position, and the other safety goes back into the post safety role. So all of a sudden we go from middle of the field open with all this room in the middle of the field for the slant to middle of the field closed, and now the slant is covered. And instead of getting off the slant route to J.J. Taylor, Mac Jones holds the football and takes a sack on third down, right? So the backside of that play, they have a single high beater. Right, they have a fade ball and an out to Gunnar Olszewski, and Gunnar wins on the out, and if Mac gets a single high read pre-snap, that's where he's going to go with the football. He's going to go to the Olszewski combination. If he reads too high, he's going to go to the slant. So figuring out how to read those coverage rotations faster on the fly is a concern of mine. The other one I would mention
let me ask you real quick before you mention the play. Do you believe Mac is the type of guy who you fool him once, fine, but he'll catch it on the second time around, which is to say, sure, first time through, he sees some new stuff. People are throwing wrinkles. Of course, you're seeing it for the first time. It's not easy to react, but he does seem, through what you saw in camp, was he able to process these mistakes quickly?
He was good at eliminating some of those mistakes, but we saw the interception, for example, that Logan Ryan had on Thursday
in the
joint
practice.
In the Thursday practice. That was another one where Max said after practice they were doing some weird things with their safeties that I wasn't really prepared for. I'm going to have to go back and look at the tape. Yep. So that was a play where they ran a trap coverage, right? They make the seam look like it's open, but Logan Ryan's lurking on the backside of the play and he jumps it, right? So that's another one of those late rotations by the safeties after the snap. Then he has the hold the ball sack against the Giants in the preseason finale. So I haven't seen him make considerable improvements in that regard yet. Do I think that he can get there? Absolutely. But that's something that you look at in college ball, And because there's not a lot of experience in college secondaries, and because you're working with 18, 19, 20-year-olds versus NFL veterans, these coverage rotations you're going to see in the NFL, these trap coverages, these post-snap rotations, they don't happen as often in college football, right? Even in the SEC, these teams don't run them quite as often. So these quarterbacks look at stagnant defenses all day in college, meaning it's the same defense that you look at pre-snap as it is post-snap. They put a post-high safety, you get a post-high safety. They put two safeties deep, you get two safeties deep. So Mac's going to have to learn how to be able to deal with that. But I think it's definitely something that he can learn from. But Bill Belichick for years, his record against rookie quarterbacks, first-year quarterbacks, is insane. The Patriots are something like they've lost maybe 2 or 3 times in the Belichick era to a rookie quarterback because Bill is great at confusing them, right? He spins the dial. He makes sure you don't see the same thing pre and post snap. He blitzes them. He gets them all out of sorts. And Brian Flores and the Miami Dolphins are going to try to do the same exact thing to Mac Jones in week 1. Todd Bowles in week 4 will do it. Dennis Allen in week 3 will do it against the New Orleans Saints. I'm sure Robert Saleh and the Jets, even though they don't have the talent necessarily as some of these other teams do that the Patriots will play, they're going to do some of that stuff as well with an experienced play caller in Saleh. So these guys, this is going to be trial by fire, 100%, right? And that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see with Mac is, like you said, how much training wheels do they put on him? How much of the running game do they focus on early on in the season, or do they just let him go out there and sling it? Because these teams are going to show him a lot of things that he's never seen before when he goes out there in the first month of the season.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the two things to consider for people at home is, the one, as you said, is, they're going to throw a lot at him for sure. And I think the Patriots are going to do a good job trying to simplify it in the early stages. Again, you harken back to the days of Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady was considered a check down quarterback through his first 3 Super Bowls for the most part. Tom Brady, the gunslinger, did not exist until 5-6 years into his career where he was letting it fly all over the field. So, I certainly think that they'll do that. You also have to, fair or not, Mac Jones is going to be judged simply on his performance, not relative to someone else. And it is, while you say, oh, he might not have picked this up, he might not have seen it, you do have to look back at Cam Newton last year, struggled on a lot of different things, missing open receivers, not just throwing them, but not seeing them, not getting through progression. So again, it's relative to what they had. And I do think we have to remind people what they had last year in Cam was not overly impressive. So again, this is why I keep saying a relatively low bar to clear. He was not competing with an entrenched starter. And in many cases, first round draft pick quarterbacks don't. Cam was, I guess, fine, but certainly not somebody who, wow, Cam did all of these things and Mac is not up to that level yet. I think Cam's level was not that high last year, where the expectations for Mac to be able to at least get to that point are that high. The what you're losing there is obviously your bully ball and your running, and
that was really the only thing. And we didn't get to see that much of the preseason
and whatever that brought.
Camp.
You don't see it in the preseason training camp because they don't do that. They don't do that.
Right. And that was the only thing that you can think of, because when it comes to timing, when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to reads, when it comes to accuracy, we talked about it all summer long, that Mac looks better out there in a red non-contact jersey than Cam because he can throw the ball to all 3 levels accurately with timing and anticipation and all the little things that the Patriots love. But we didn't get to see the running part of it with Cam's legs, right? So that's going to be something that the Patriots are going to lose here. They're not going to have the read option plays. They're not going to have the goal line package with Cam Newton there. They're not going to have those things. Now, I do wonder, could you see some wildcat with Damian Harris on the goal line? Could you see some tricks, some different things, Jonnu Smith being involved in some of these running plays potentially as well, that could mitigate the fact that they don't have that? And obviously they're not a quarterback one Super Bowls with a stationary quarterback. So it's obviously doable. But that would be the one thing that I could only hang my hat on for Cam Newton when I kept on saying that Mac looks better. The only thing that you could sit back and say, well, Cam is better at this than Mac Jones, is running the football. That was it. Mac was a much better passer already in year 1 as a rookie, and you just knew that the improvements were coming, right? He was going to keep getting better. Mac, that is, was going to keep getting better and better and better with every single rep. He wasn't going to regress, right? He's certainly not going to regress. And every single day from mini camp till now, we just saw him continue to stack together the days, right? And just get better and better and improve and make good on his mistakes or make up for his mistakes and learn from those issues and learn from those errors. And ultimately, it was the only thing that Cam could do better than Mac was he's a better athlete.
Yeah,
right?
And look,
that was it.
And again, the obvious advantage to having the running quarterback is straight math. You just have more people going against more people. And again, when the quarterback is a running threat, you're able to block that up better. And, the Patriots used that to their advantage when they were at their best last year with the games where they ran for 200 plus yards. It's not to say that they can't do that because their offensive line is certainly a strength and they have a fleet of pretty good and versatile running backs, but it will be a more traditional offense and it's going to look much more similar to what you saw in the Tom Brady years, which again is really what Josh McDaniels wants to do with this team and the type of offense that he wants to run. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, huge challenge in week one. Anything else you want to say on the Cam Newton front before we move over quickly to Stephon Gilmore? And again, Evan's down in Foxboro right now, recapping the breaking news. Cam Newton cut. There are more cut downs coming today at 4 o'clock. There's some trickling out there. There's not a big surprise outside of obviously this one as of yet. Obviously, cutting Cam does make it so there are more roster spots of it. Gilmore to the pup and cutting Cam create a little bit more space on that opening day roster. So that might adjust some of the predictions that you'd put out yesterday. So anything on the Cam front before we move over to Gilmore and the rest of the roster?
Ultimately, I think that Patriots fans, on top of just being excited about having a first round quarterback win a starting job and be the quarterback for week one, I think Patriots fans should be happy or hold solace in the fact that ultimately I think we thought for a time there, especially last year when Bill Belichick refused to go to Jared Stidham, that there was some stubbornness involved with Cam Newton, right? There was some concern there potentially that maybe Bill Belichick had some weird attachment to Cam Newton that he wasn't going to let go, right? And that ultimately didn't matter in this competition. And whatever we thought on the outside about how Bill felt about Cam Newton, and I'm sure that he meant everything that he said, and he was honestly a pleasure to cover. He was a great guy to cover. He was entertaining. Yeah. He was great with the media. He was a great citizen here in New England and a great person to have on the team. But ultimately, the best player won the job. And that, I think, is a good thing that Bill Belichick is still able to see that we have to go with the best player. We have to ride with the best player and not worried about all that other stuff.
And everything about Cam Newton made sense last year. You were trying to catch lightning in a bottle, see if you could recapture some of the magic that made him an MVP in years prior. It more suited their big bully ball kind of mindset because they were not very deep at the skill positions last year. So having a quarterback who could sling it all over the field might not have really paid dividends with last year's roster. But the culture stuff can't be overstated rather.
Right.
The vibe around the team was people were not having fun. Tom Brady was kind of sour in his last couple of years because there was a riff and he didn't like what was going on behind the scenes. And it was tense. It was covering the team. It didn't feel like anybody was having fun. And it lightened up a great deal. And a lot of it was because of Cam Newton. And that was a big deal for them last year. And again, they were competitive up until a point where they weren't last year. They were threatening as potentially, trying to find a way to sneak into the playoffs. They ultimately were not able to. But yes, this clearly seems like the best person won out in this job. And, the Patriots have to feel pretty solid about it to make a move like this, move into a rookie quarterback. So we want to move on. A couple other bits of news here. And again, on the Cam Newton front and on the roster cut front, you will be doing a Patriots beat still later today?
Yes, absolutely.
What time is that?
Around 5 o'clock, I would say, depending on what we find out and if we get all the cuts and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So in the 5 o'clock range, guys, take a peek, follow us, Patriots CLNS, if you don't already. Also, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channels, I assume most of you are, please do. You'll be notified. Turn on, hit that little bell You'll be notified when we're about to go live or when we create a link to go live. But we'll also send out notifications on Patriots CLNS, so you'll know when Evan and Alex can break down all of the Patriots moves. One of the other ones, and this happened a little while ago, just as we were going on, Patriots are placing Stephon Gilmore on the PUP list. He had quad surgery at the end of last year. There's an issue with his injury. There's an issue with his contract. I'm not sure what's at play here. I assume this is obviously more physical, but there's still a bit of a standoff with these guys. What do we think is going on here?
Well, I think ultimately what ended up happening is that Stephon Gilmore, in order for him to ramp it back up to be ready to play,
needed his money.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it, and I can get into that in a second. But I think ultimately, because of the standoff that they've had, this is what nowadays people call this a hold in, right? Because players don't hold out anymore.
He's at the facility. He's hanging out.
Right. Because the league has made it impossible with the fines and stuff like that to truly hold out and not report anymore.
And so when you're injured, you can do that because you're not technically out there playing. You're doing his rehab and whatever. So he's there biding his time-ish.
Right. And so he's holding in. Xavier Howard also had to hold in until they resolved his contract situation in Miami. So this is happening across the league. And with Stephon Gilmore, ultimately, there needs to be a shoe to drop with his contract. He wants to get paid more money this year to play for the Patriots. That's going to have to happen for him to give the okay to get back out there on the field. But even if that were to happen tonight, let's say Tuesday night, the Patriots make all their cuts and they finally go back to Stephon Gilmore. And
he hasn't done anything.
He hasn't done anything yet. He's rehabbing the surgery. He hasn't practiced. He hasn't played in any preseason games. He hasn't done anything. So when that happens, you don't want to rush him back on the field, and you don't want to throw him out there in 12 days in week one without any real preparation. So I think ultimately what happened was that there just wasn't enough time for the Patriots to resolve this contract issue, for Stephon Gilmore to get 100% healthy, and then for Stephon Gilmore to ramp it back up to be able to play in an NFL game in 12 days, for the Patriots to use Stephon Gilmore in September. So I think that they just said, you know what, we're going to save the roster spot by doing this. We ultimately don't need him until we get to later in the year anyways. Bill Belichick always says real football doesn't start till Thanksgiving. So Stephon Gilmore will be ready to go by week 6, which mid-October. And then the Patriots can really start to make their push at that point when they have their defense completely together. I do think that there is still an element of the contract involved here, though. He's going to have to get incentivized to play this year for the Patriots with some sort of contract resolution between the two sides.
Yep. So we have that. Now let's take into account the Gilmore situation, and with Cam. One, this is bad. You've got two things going on right now. You've got that tough schedule for Mac to navigate as a starting quarterback, and the greatest area of weakness on this team, clearly, and you've been saying this since minute one, and that was whether Gilmore stepped on the field or not, is depth in that cornerback position. I mean, you always felt good, certainly with Gilmore, JC opposite him, even though, again, not having a veteran like Jason McCourty and someone who can play situationally was a hit, and then John Jones. But really behind that is a lot of question marks. And now you're starting one of those question marks. And we're talking about potentially starting Jalen Mills at the outside cornerback position, which is totally miscast, with JC Jackson operating as your number one. And what's funny is for a couple of years here, you had outstanding cornerback coverage and a crap pass rush, and that's how the Patriots got things done, is people would just be covered for longer. Now you're really going to need that pass rush to step up, because they are definitely thin to start here at the cornerback. And I don't even want to think about week 4 against Brady and the Patriots and all of those receivers, what they're going to throw out there without Gilmore.
Right. I mean, week 1 against Miami, you're going to be going up against Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, and a really good Miami Dolphins skill position group, right? I mean, they got tight ends, they got wide receivers down there, they got a young quarterback in Tua who they are high on as well. I know there's rumors about Deshaun.
Parker, Waddle, and Fuller. Is Fuller healthy?
Fuller is not healthy, and he's also suspended, I believe, to
Oh, he's
start the
week one.
season.
He's out for week 1 or 2.
Yeah,
That's right.
right. So I don't think he's going to be in the game, but still, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker are enough, right, to make defensive coordinators Steve Belichick, Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo lose some sleep at night, as they say, right? So that's going to be a test. Week 2 against the Jets is what it is, but then you get into week 3 and week 4 against New Orleans and against Tampa Bay. You're talking about some really good passing attacks, right? Some teams that have some really good receivers. Obviously, Tampa Bay has a pretty good quarterback that you might have heard of. So there's going to be a lot of tests for this secondary. Now, the good news is that the pass rush has looked as good as advertised through the entire summer. Josh Uche, Matt Judon, Van Noy, Hightower, certainly Chase Winovich when he gets in there, Christian Barmore and Dietrich Wise on the defensive line as interior guys rushing the passer. Everybody has looked good in that group rushing the passer, right? There's got some issues maybe against stopping the run with some of those individual players, Winovich, Wise, Barmore, but in terms of the package, when they actually go out there and pin their ears back, this is going to be a really ferocious pass rush. So that's how they're going to have to do it, right? They're going to have to disguise it. They're going to have to cover some things up on the back end, and they're going to have to really get after the quarterback. And that's going to ultimately be this defense's calling card for the whole time that Stephon Gilmore isn't here.
Could you see, here's the other thing too, is, obviously a reasonable name out there, still looking for a job, Richard Sherman. I don't see it, but again, you wonder right now there's a couple names released out there as well. Wouldn't be stunning if the Patriots snag one of the guys who gets let go. And again, you're talking about, 25 to 30 players per team about to get whacked today. There's going to be a pool of talent, and there might be some surprises out there, but again, nothing that's going to be able to overcome not having Stephon Gilmore for the first 6 weeks of the season. So that's going to be definitely tough. Anything else you see here as far as the roster goes? Looking ahead, have you changed your thinking in terms of some of the cut downs and who may now make it and who may not?
No, I mean, I had a feeling that they were only going to carry 2 quarterbacks. I was wrong about which 2 they were going to carry, right? I thought it was going to be Cam and Mac, and Brian Hoyer was going to be the odd man out. Instead, they throw this surprise at us with Cam. With Stephon Gilmore's situation, I know they just traded for Shaun Wade, but you do wonder if there's another shoe to drop at corner because they put Stephon Gilmore on PUP, reserve PUP, out for 6 weeks at least. And they also cut Miles Bryant, which I thought was a bit of a surprise as well, right? I didn't see that one coming either. So could there be another move there at cornerback coming, another trade, another acquisition of some sort at corner to bring in a guy with some experience? Shaun Wade's a rookie that's played a couple of preseason games with Baltimore and the Patriots. I mean, that doesn't count, right? I'm talking about a guy that's a solidified, solid veteran. You do wonder also, and at the time, Jason McCourty felt like his role here was not going to be enough, and he felt like he could play more in Miami. Looking back on it now, you do wonder if the Patriots regret letting Jason McCourty go to the Dolphins, because he's the perfect guy to do what they need for over the next 6 weeks, right? Just
serviceable,
serviceable,
you put him in and you're fine.
Knows the
he can
system.
Still run. He knows the system, all of that. Yep.
Yeah, if there is one to second guess about this offseason, then letting Jason McCourty walk. And that wasn't just the Patriots, right? Jason McCourty's camp felt like his best opportunity was in Miami. So they had to convince Jason McCourty to come back, and they weren't able to because Jason McCourty saw the writing on the wall of all these players ahead of him on the depth chart and all these young guys that they wanted to sprinkle in. But now that Miles Bryant's not here anymore or is released from the team, that one, to me, the surprise of the day until Cam Newton just took the cake, obviously, was Miles Bryant getting cut. So you have Gilmore on PUP. Yeah,
Miles that made Bryant you think, maybe Gilmore's okay. That was surprising, but yeah.
Right, you have those 2 guys now on the outside looking into the cornerback room, at least to start the season. So maybe there's another shoe to drop in terms of a veteran coming in here at that position.
Yep. So we'll see what happens. Again, just to let everybody else know, this was an emergency, live broadcast for the Cam Newton situation. We've got a ton more coverage on our YouTube channel, so head right over there. Evan and Alex broke down the move, so you get their take on it as well. Plus, there's going to be a live Patriots Beat podcast coming up. We're saying 5 o'clock, but follow us on Patriots CLNS. Follow Evan Lazar, not just for notifications on who's going to go live here, but for all other Patriots matters. He is again, if you're here, top Patriots analyst on the beat, and I don't think it's particularly close. So make sure you follow all of Evan's stuff on our channel, clnsmedia.com and all that. In the meantime, we're going to wrap it up. We got a ton more coverage throughout the day. So, Evan, I'll let you go do your stuff. Just recapping for everybody. Cam Newton released. Mac Jones will be the Patriots Week 1 starter. So get ready for that. We may get a chance to hear from Mac on Wednesday. When is a starting quarterback? Wednesday, Thursday?
Yeah, usually Wednesday or Friday. So it sounds like maybe we would get Mac on Thursday of this week potentially. I know that they said that there was going to be player availability on Thursday, but they might hide Mac until we get into the.
They might. Other sign people missed was which was pretty sneaky. Was Hoyer doing the EEI interview yesterday?
Yeah.
that smelled funny too.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what happened. Again, obviously, everyone's got a ton of opinions. The conversation is going to continue. So stay with us for all of our coverage until 5 o'clock when Evan and Alex pop up. We're going to sign off. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining.